Everything you think you know about your own intelligence is about to be challenged. Think about yesterday. You were reading something, an article, a chapter, maybe even a long text from someone you care about. And somewhere around the third or fourth paragraph, your eyes were still moving across the words, but your brain had completely checked out. You scrolled back up to reread. Then you got distracted by something else entirely. Then you gave up and watched a 60-second video instead. And the crazy part is, you used to be able to read for hours. Something has changed. You can feel it, even if you cannot name it. This is not you getting dumber. This is not your generation being lazier than the ones before. This is something happening to you at the level of your actual brain cells, your actual neural wiring. And it has been happening so gradually that most people will never even realize it is occurring until it is very difficult to reverse. Here is the statistic that stopped me cold when I first heard it. Neuroscientists have confirmed that the brain physically rewires itself based on how it is used, a property called neuroplasticity. And studies tracking internet usage patterns show that people who use the internet heavily for several years show measurable structural changes in the prefrontal cortex, the part of your brain responsible for deep thinking, sustained attention, and making complex decisions. The internet is not just changing how you spend your time. It is changing the physical shape of your brain. By the end of this video, you are going to understand exactly what is happening inside your skull every time you open a browser, why your reading comprehension and memory have quietly deteriorated, and most importantly, you are going to have a concrete, practical strategy to take back the cognitive depth that is being quietly stripped away from you. This is not about going off the grid. This is about being smart enough to protect the most valuable organ you own. But before we get to the solution, we need to talk about who benefits when your ability to think deeply gets weaker. Because here is what most people are missing. The internet was not designed with your cognitive health in mind. It was designed to maximize engagement, and engagement is measured by clicks, time on page, and return visits, not by whether you actually understood what you read or retained anything useful. Every hyperlink you see is a deliberate design choice to pull your attention away from the current page towards something else. Every notification is engineered to interrupt your train of thought at the exact moment your brain is starting to build momentum. Every infinite scroll is built to eliminate the natural stopping points that would give your brain a chance to consolidate what it just processed. The people who built these platforms are extraordinarily intelligent. They understand attention economics better than almost any psychologist alive. And the business model is simple. Your distraction is their revenue. When you cannot focus, when you skim instead of read, when you need constant novelty to stay engaged, you are the perfect customer for a platform that profits from serving you an endless stream of stimulation. This is not a conspiracy theory. This is just capitalism working exactly as designed, in a direction that is directly opposed to your intellectual growth. But here is the good news, and this really is good news. Your brain is not permanently damaged. It is not stuck, because the same neuroplasticity that allowed the internet to rewire your brain towards shallowness can be used in reverse, deliberately and systematically, to rebuild the kind of deep, slow, rich thinking that produces real understanding, real creativity, and real intelligence. Focus is not something you either have or you do not. It is a neural pathway. And neural pathways grow stronger with use and weaker with neglect, the same way muscles in your body do. Think about the first time you tried to do a push-up. For some of us, that was genuinely embarrassing. But if you kept showing up, if you kept doing the uncomfortable work, the muscle grew. Your brain operates by the exact same principle. The capacity for deep reading, for sustained concentration, for holding complex ideas in your head long enough to actually do something with them, that capacity is a muscle. It atrophied because you stopped using it, and it can be rebuilt because you can start using it again. The book that lays all of this out with breathtaking clarity is The Shallows by Nicholas Carr. Nicholas Carr is a Pulitzer Prize finalist who spent years researching the neuroscience of reading, memory, and the cognitive impact of digital technology. What he produced is one of the most important and most ignored books of the last 2 decades. Let's get into what it actually teaches. The first thing Carr establishes that will completely change how you think about your daily habits is this: the medium shapes the mind, not just the message. This is an idea he borrows from the media theorist Marshall McLuhan, but Carr takes it further with actual neuroscience. He argues that every technology we use to read and process information literally trains our brains to think in the pattern that technology encourages. Here is what that means practically. The printed book was designed for linear, uninterrupted, deep reading from one page to the next. Centuries of reading books trained Western civilization to think in long, connected, cause and effect chains of reasoning. That capacity for sustained linear thought is what produced the scientific revolution, philosophy, literature, and most of the complex ideas we consider markers of human intelligence. The internet is designed for the exact opposite. It is nonlinear, fragmented, hyperlinked, and notification-driven. Every time you use it heavily, you are training your brain to process information in short bursts, to jump from stimulus to stimulus, and to treat depth as boring and novelty as rewarding. The result is a mind that is extraordinarily good at skimming and filtering, but increasingly poor at the slow, patient work of understanding something complex. Think about the last time you tried to read a long-form article, something serious, something that required your sustained attention for 20 or 30 minutes. How many times did you check your phone in that window? How much of it do you actually remember right now? That discomfort you feel when you try to read deeply is not a personality trait. It is a symptom of a trained pattern, and today's action is simply this. Find one long-form article on a topic you care about and read it, start to finish with your phone in a different room. Not a news headline, not a thread. A real article. Today, ab aate hain to something Carr explains about memory that is genuinely alarming once you understand it. He draws a critical distinction between two types of memory. Working memory, which is the small temporary holding space in your mind where active thinking happens, and long-term memory, where real knowledge lives. Here is the problem. The internet floods your working memory constantly with hyperlinks, sidebars, videos, notifications, and competing information. And when your working memory is flooded, the transfer of information to long-term memory is disrupted or blocked entirely. This is why you can spend 3 hours online and feel like you learned something. But when someone asks you what you actually know about the topic the next day, the shelf is surprisingly bare. You processed a lot of stimulation. You retained very little knowledge. The difference between consuming information and actually learning something is whether it made it from your working memory into long-term storage. And deep, focused, uninterrupted reading is one of the primary mechanisms that enables that transfer. Search about the last exam you studied for by switching between tabs, checking messages, and watching videos. Now think about the rare time you sat somewhere quiet with just your notes and actually worked through the material without interruption. The second session probably produced learning that lasted. The first produced the illusion of productivity. The practical move here is to take one subject you are currently studying and block 45 minutes. No tabs, no notifications, no phone. To just read and handwrite key ideas from memory, one session. Today, the information will stick in a way that surprises you. Lincoln's son, Carr also addresses something that a lot of people bring up as a counter-argument. They say, look, Google makes me smarter because I can access any information instantly. Why memorize things when the answer is always one search away? And on the surface, that sounds reasonable. But Carr tears this argument apart beautifully with neuroscience. Intelligence is not just access to information. Intelligence is the ability to connect ideas, to spot patterns across domains, to synthesize something new from existing knowledge. And that synthesis only happens in long-term memory, where your brain has stored enough material to begin drawing non-obvious connections. When you outsource your memory to Google, you are not enhancing your intelligence. You are hollowing it out. You are keeping the appearance of a library while removing all the books and replacing them with a search bar. The people who produce genuinely original thinking, scientists, writers, entrepreneurs, artists, are not the people with the fastest access to information. They are the people with the richest internal libraries. They have read enough, retained enough, and thought deeply enough that their mind can do the slow creative work of connection without an external prompt. Your action from this idea is to pick one thing you looked up online recently and actually memorize it. Write it down from memory 3 times. That small act of deliberate encoding is a form of cognitive resistance training. Do it today. Yahan ek aur cheez hai that I found incredibly uncomfortable when I first read it. And I want you to sit with the discomfort too, because it is pointing at something important. Carr argues that the act of deep reading, the kind you do with a physical book, linearly without interruption, is not a passive experience. It is one of the most cognitively active things a human being can do. When you read deeply, your brain is simultaneously decoding language, building mental models, connecting new information to existing knowledge, imagining scenes, anticipating outcomes, and evaluating arguments. It is a full brain workout. And when that habit disappears, when you replace books with feeds, you do not just lose the content, you lose the workout. Your brain's capacity for that kind of sustained, multi-layered processing quietly weakens from disuse. I have to be honest with you here. When I first started taking this seriously, I tried to read 20 pages of a non-fiction book, and I had to reread the same paragraph 4 times because my concentration kept slipping. Me, someone who makes content about books. It was genuinely humbling. The habit had atrophied more than I realized. The rebuild is simple but uncomfortable. Start with 10 pages of a real physical book. Not an e-book with Wi-Fi enabled, not an audiobook. 10 physical pages with a pen to underline. Do it today. 10 pages, that is all. Just 10 pages. Abiasuno. One of the most thought-provoking sections of The Shallows is where Carr goes back in history to trace how previous technologies changed human cognition and what we can learn from those transitions. When the printing press arrived in the 15th century, there was genuine cultural panic. Scholars worried that books would make people lazy because they would no longer need to memorize things. They could just look them up. Sound familiar? But what actually happened was the opposite. The widespread availability of books did not make humanity stupider. It made humanity more capable of complex thought because it gave more people access to the long-form reading habit that trains deep cognition. Carr's point is that the question is not whether a technology exists. It is what cognitive habits that technology encourages at scale. Books encourage depth. The internet, as currently designed, encourages breadth without depth. And a mind trained only for breadth is a mind that is wide, but very, very shallow. This is where practical tip becomes crucial. Deliberately introduce friction into your internet use. Carr does not say quit the internet. He says be intentional about the context in which you use it. Use a separate device for deep work and a separate one for browsing, if you can. Or use browser extensions that block distracting sites during focused hours. Make shallow browsing slightly inconvenient and make deep reading slightly more accessible. Keep a book on your desk, not your phone. Abhise, rearrange your physical space so that the first thing your hand reaches for is not your phone, but something that feeds your mind. Today, rearrange one surface in your room. Now, let me tell you about someone whose story lives in this space and whose experience feels uncomfortably close to home for a lot of us. Imagine Caro, a college junior named Priya. Pre-med, sharp, genuinely intelligent, the kind of person who in high school could sit down with a textbook for 3 hours and emerge having actually understood it. But by her second year of college, something had shifted. She was spending more time studying than she ever had in high school, but her retention was terrible. She would read a chapter and then go to her study group and realize she could not reconstruct what she had just read. She started sleeping less, panicking more, questioning whether she was actually smart enough for the path she had chosen. She came across The Shallows almost by accident. A professor mentioned it offhandedly, and something clicked immediately. She realized that over the past 2 years, her reading habits had transformed completely. In high school, she read physical books with limited screen time. In college, her studying had migrated entirely to a laptop surrounded by open tabs, with her phone next to her keyboard. She had unknowingly replaced deep reading with fragmented browsing and called it studying. She made one structural change. For 6 weeks, she read her medical textbooks physically, in print, with her laptop closed and her phone in her bag. No tabs, no switching, just the book and a highlighter. Her exam scores went up significantly in the first testing cycle. Her study time actually decreased because retention improved so dramatically. She did not become a different person. She just reclaimed the cognitive architecture she had always had. Deco. Priya's brain is not different from yours. Her situation is probably not that different from yours either. The only question is whether you are willing to make the structural change she made. So here is the challenge I want to give you. And this one is genuinely small, so I do not want to hear any excuses. Ajsi. Tonight, before you sleep, put your phone on the other side of the room. Not silent, not face down, the other side of the room. And pick up any book at all, and read for 15 minutes before you close your eyes. That is the whole challenge. 15 minutes of uninterrupted reading, phone out of reach, before you sleep tonight. Here is what will happen. The first few minutes will feel slightly uncomfortable because your brain will expect its usual pre-sleep scrolling ritual. That discomfort is real, and it is meaningful. It is the sound of a trained habit being gently interrupted. Push through it. By minute 10, something will quiet down inside you. You will feel a kind of mental settling that the phone never produces. That feeling is your brain doing something it evolved to do. processing language in depth rather than reacting to stimulation. You will sleep better, and in the morning you will remember what you read, which will feel almost strange because you are so used to consuming and forgetting. That single experience is enough to show you what is possible. Now I want you to picture something for me. Imagine 6 months from today, after you have been consistently protecting your ability to think deeply. You are in class, in a meeting, in a conversation, and while everyone else around you is reacting and skimming and losing the thread, you are following the argument with clarity. You can hold a complex idea in your head long enough to actually evaluate it, push back on it, or build something from it. Your work is better, not because you are working more hours, but because the hours you work actually produce understanding, not just the appearance of effort. Your professors notice, your manager notices, you notice. Your relationships change too, because a mind that has been retrained for depth is a mind that can actually listen, not just wait for its turn to speak. The people you care about can feel when you are genuinely present with them. And that presence, that quality of attention, is one of the most powerful things one human being can offer another. तुम वो इंसान बन जाते हो जिसके साथ लोग genuinely feel heard. That is a rare and valuable thing. And inside, this is the one that matters most. You stop feeling that specific anxiety that comes from knowing you consumed a lot and understood very little. The guilt of a wasted day dissolves because the days are no longer wasted. You finish them with actual knowledge, actual progress, actual depth. That is not a small thing. That is peace. That life is available to you. It is not behind some wall of talent or luck. It is behind a consistent decision to protect your cognitive health the same way you would protect your physical health. Son, you came to this video for a reason. Something in you already knew that something was off. That the way you have been consuming information is not producing the life you want. That awareness is not a flaw. It is intelligence. It is your brain flagging a problem and pointing you toward a solution. तुम capable हो of depth, of complexity, of real understanding. Not someday, right now. तुम्हारे अंदर वो सब कुछ है that you need to reclaim what the internet has been quietly borrowing from you without your permission. The only thing that was missing was the knowledge of what was actually happening. And now you have it. तुम कर सकते हो? And the first step is 15 minutes tonight with a book and your phone across the room. If this hit you the way it hit me when I first understood it, give this video a like. It genuinely helps more people find this content, and I want as many people as possible to hear this. Subscribe to Book Brief Hub because this is what we do here every single week. We translate the most important ideas in the most important books into something you can actually use in your real life. And share this with someone who you know is in the same pattern. Because some of the most powerful things we can do for the people we love is hand them the exact idea they needed at the exact right moment. Ruk jao. One last thing. Your brain is not Google's to redesign. Take it back.